Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're doing a painting based on Rito Village from The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. So I was talking with my friend Chugga Conroy during TRG Coliseum, and he suggested I paint Rito Village from Breath of the Wild. And I was like, that's a really good idea. It's been on my list, but it's not anything I've seriously considered or really thought hard about. But when he mentioned it, I thought about my Route 1 Pokemon painting I had done, and how I had done it in two colors, and I thought it would be fun to do Rito Village in a similar style, kind of, where I pick two colors and then I do the entire thing with it, where the warm colors are all one color and the cool colors are all another. And I've decided to go with this orangish gold color for all of the warm, because it gives it this very golden hour sunrise sunset feel, and a navy desaturated blue for everything else. So there's not really a whole lot of yellow and orange to this piece. It's really only where the sun is hitting all of the edges of everything else. Otherwise, it's just the sky that gets that color. So what I want to do first is I want to draw this out so I can see about where I want the sun to go, which isn't going to be there, it's going to be below the horizon. But that way I can kind of focus the color on the left side of where the pillar is here. Now the view of this is more so from the side of it, like where you would come up to Rito Village with the bridges is more like that way towards where the highlight is. This is more so like the back of it. So I liked this view because you can really see the birdcage huts that they live in hanging from the edge of this pillar, and I thought that's a really cool part of Rito Village that I really liked. So I wanted to show that off. There's a little bit of the shrine that you can see up here, so there's little parts of it that are going to kind of bring it together. So I need to draw everything in, figure out where left of this pillar is going to be, and then start painting my sky. A few things have happened. I finished the sky, and as I was blending my yellow and oranges, I started to do a little bit of these rays where I just brought them back towards the sun below the horizon here, and I liked how it looked, so I didn't blend it in like I normally would. And it's really noticeable over here, and I think it turned out pretty cool for this piece. And then I took some yellow ochre and brought in clouds, and in my sketch I had drawn clouds on the side, and I made myself a note that said don't put clouds there in the painting, and I did it anyway. But it's okay because once I drew everything in here, they're going to get covered up, so it's fine. And you can see just enough of them over here that I like how it looks. So for all of this mid-ground, foreground stuff, I drew everything in, went over it with a painting marker that has acrylic in it, and drew where everything was going to go after I was happy with the chalk version. So I want to kind of break this into sections. I have this very far away background stuff that kind of sits like way back here, and then I have some mid-ground stuff that comes in over here, and then I have the foreground of this pillar, and then like Rito Village itself. So everything has a little bit of a different value scale. The stuff in the far background is quite gray, where it's harder to see the differences between like some of these ridges of rock and then the parts on top of them. And then this mid-ground part, you can see a little bit more detail, and then the foreground you can see even more. So I'm going to break that into sections and finish the very background, the mid-ground, and then work on the foreground here. So my first layer has a lot more atmospheric perspective, where I'm trying to show distance by showing less detail, the colors are a bit more washed out, and as I come forward into my midground, which is going to kind of just be this part I paint next here, it will be more blue, it will be darker with more detail, and then the extreme foreground part, which is all of Rito Village, the tower, and then one of the posts that surround it, those will be the darkest ones and they will have the most detail to them. So I want to do this part over here, which is basically everything except this tower, and then bring in some of the misty clouds that will surround the water around the bottom part of Rito Village. So I've been hard at work painting a lot of rock, because basically all of this is rock except the sky. And I had done that background layer, I really liked it. I did the midground layer and I liked it, but they didn't go together. Their blues were too different from each other to feel like they should belong in the same painting. So while I had liked what I had done, it just didn't match. And I can't make them match 100% because then it doesn't look like it's further back than the midground layer. So what I did is I took some of the cyan blue I had done back here with this piece for the background, made it a wash with glazing liquid, and then just painted over some of the areas in here to make it a little bit more cyan and a little less navy phthalo blue. And I also did the reverse, where I took the blue I had here, made it a wash with glazing liquid, and then painted over some of these areas to make it more navy in those areas to kind of combine them into a coherent painting, so they didn't look like they came from different pieces. So that worked really well. And then I had to do all of this rock, all of the dark rock that's part of Rito Village. And that part was intimidating because there is a lot of rock here and it needs to look correct with how the different angles are, where the light is, where everything is going to go. So that part was a little intimidating, like I said. I was scared to do it. So I did the little pillar here because there's those pillars that go all the way around the village. And I did that one first and I was like, okay, that looks good. Now I can try to do everything else. So I started with some navy blues on top of the black just to give it a little bit of detail and not look solid black in those areas. And then I started to work my way into lighter and lighter and then lighter blues. Now I like this palette knife for rocks because it gives me two edges. This little one right here and then the big one on the left side. So if I'm working on something small like this piece right here, I can use the little edge and just scrape on a little bit of that lighter color paint. But if I'm doing something larger like up here, I can use this large flat edge and work in that area, scraping on paint up there. Which is exactly what I did. After I had everything solid black, I started to use the big area and the little area to scrape on the darker blues, and then I went into lighter and lighter blues, especially on the left side of everything to catch the sun, and that's how I did all of this rock. So while it's all done, I'm really happy with it. I especially like up here where you're gonna see a lot of it, because down here it's gonna get covered in pine trees and all of the different houses that sit on the face of this. So it worked really well for what I wanted it to do. But now that that's done, I can start to work on details. And what I'm doing is drawing it first in chalk, like these two pine trees over here, going over it with carbon black so they're solidified and I won't accidentally erase them. And then I can start to do details like I am on this little porch thing that sits right here. So I'm just going to work through different areas like down here where all the pines are, circle up to the houses that hang here, and then kind of come down and around and fill everything in. Probably doing it all carbon black first and then slowly adding those different color details to bring in highlights. I've blocked in everything for Rito, and not everything is filled in solid carbon black yet. I'm going to fill that in as I paint in the different blues and highlights on things. I want to make sure that I know where things are going to go and to show, especially with the trees, some openings in those trees so they're not just a solid mass of tree. Now, like I said, not everything is blocked in. Like this house back here, you can see these pieces that come down that are solid carbon black, but then there's the ones next to it or in between them that aren't filled in. That's so I can see where those overlap and where that distinction is on the thing between those different pieces. So that's why like the inside of this part isn't filled in when I could fill it in, but then I would lose like the top line I have of the edge of this curve. So I can paint all of the roof part here and then paint the inside and then work my way down and not have to worry about that. Now there are some things I've chosen to leave out. For example, there's a big platform that connects all of these up here, kind of like the little bit of one you can see over here. I've chosen not to put that in because I really like the stark contrast of the houses hanging here off the edge of the rock face. Putting a platform to connect all of those, like that you would walk up to go in them, I think detracts from their beauty and is just kind of confusing with how I'm going to paint everything. It's confusing enough over here where things are already in shadow, but to add more of that into this area I think would detract from the art piece, so I'm choosing not to put that in there. So I'm going to start filling in different blues for all of these, thinking about my highlights where my sun is back here, casting light on the edges of things, and then I'll work into darker areas over, especially on this side, where the rock is going to put things in shadow. Things are looking really good. I need to erase all of my chalk with a damp towel because I'm confusing some of it for paint. I don't actually know where all of the chalk is, so I'm going to wipe everything down and get rid of it. That way I can finish up anything I need to that has a little bit more detail work that it needs, and definitely adding a little bit of color to some of these pine trees so they're not solid carbon black. And we're done! We have Rito Village with contrasting colors. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a poster or a phone case, or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.